It happened nearly 7 or 8 years ago, back when I was still deeply into camping and hiking. I had this one spot in Tennessee, a secluded area near the border with North Carolina, that was like my second home. I'd been going there for years, almost every weekend, no matter what. Sometimes I'd go alone when I needed to clear my head, and other times I'd take family or friends if they were up for it. I didn't really care who joined me. It was my routine, my escape. So that day, my buddy Larry and I decided to hit the trail and camp at my usual spot. We arrived around midday, and the area near the creek was perfect quiet, secluded, with nothing but nature stretching for miles. We made the most of our time there, soaking in the serenity. Before getting dark, we got the fire going and cooked up some simple camping meals, all while chatting about everything and nothing. We were out there to relax, disconnect, and savor the kind of peace that only the woods can provide. Now, if you've ever been out camping, you know that by nightfall, everything goes still. The whole world kind of slows down, like you're at the center of the universe, just existing. That night, the quiet was so thick, it almost felt unnatural. It was exactly what I needed. We went to sleep around 11 p.m. Nothing special. Larry was the type who always stayed up late, so it wasn't unusual for him to still be awake when I was ready to hit the sack. I was dead tired, so I fell asleep almost immediately. The sound of the fire outside the tent eventually faded as I drifted off into a deep sleep. But then, not long after I had closed my eyes, I was woken up. It was Larry. His voice was frantic, urgent way that makes you sit up immediately. "Hey man, wake up. There's something out there. Lights. I don't know what it is, but they're like hovering over the trees. Now, look, I've been camping long enough to know that when you're out in the middle of nowhere, things can get weird. Animals, lights, shadows, and sometimes your buddy can get spooked by the smallest thing." So, at first, I didn't take him seriously. But I did open my eyes. The tent was pitch black, except for a faint, purplish glow coming through the fabric. It was unlike any light I had ever seen before. It wasn't from the stars, the moon, or even a distant campfire. It was a strange, almost unnatural purple light, and it was coming from somewhere far away, from the direction of the trees. "Yeah, I see it," I muttered, groggily, "but it's probably just someone else's campfire or something. Go back to sleep, man." But Larry wasn't having it. He was insistent, waking me up again. No, man. It's still there. And it's moving. It's hovering just over the trees. I was barely awake enough to process it, but I just brushed it off. "It's fine. Whatever it is, it's nothing. Go back to sleep." And that was the end of it. He seemed to settle back down after that. I didn't give it much more thought, and soon enough, I was back asleep. But something about that moment lingered in the back of my mind, and I had a feeling I wouldn't be getting a full night's sleep after all. The next day, we went on a short hike and spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and enjoying the beautiful scenery. We settled in by the fire again that evening, cooked up some dinner, and talked about all the random things, whatever. We hit the sack at the same time that night, but this time, something was different. As I lay there, trying to drift off, I started to hear something. The sound of footsteps. They weren't close, but surely it was footsteps sound that I heard, the kind you'd hear if someone were walking around outside the tent. I lay there, frozen. My heart rate picked up, but this was different. This sounded like a person. I lay still. I waited for the sound to come again, but nothing. I opened my eyes, hoping to catch a glimpse of whoever or whatever was out there. But there was nothing. No movement, no figure in the darkness. I pushed the thought from my mind. That night, we barely slept. The third night, though now, that's when things really started getting weird. By then, I had gotten used to the sounds of the forest, but this night felt off. The first thing I noticed was that there was no signal on my phone. No bars. I didn't think much of it at first, figuring we were too far out in the wilderness for a good signal. But then I checked again, and I saw something else, black SMS messages on my phone. I didn't recognize the number, and the texts were completely blank. I tried to read them, but it was like the messages were just void. Nothing made sense. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just some glitch or a weird network issue, but the texts kept coming. Every time I checked my phone, it was like someone or something was trying to communicate with me, but I couldn't understand it. I felt a deep unease settle in my stomach. It was just wrong. That was when I decided we'd had enough of this trip. Something wasn't right, and I didn't know what it was, but I felt a growing sense of dread creeping over me. We packed up the camp and decided to head back home early. I didn't want to risk any more strange things happening. Whatever was going on, I didn't want to be around to find out. We left that night, and I remember the drive back home as one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. The trees looked different, the night felt colder, and I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something following us. But nothing was there. That's the thing about experiences like this. They don't always give you answers. And that's what haunted me for days after. The sense that something had happened, something that I couldn't explain, but it was there, lingering in the back of my mind. I've never been able to shake the feeling that whatever it was that I experienced in those woods, it was something I was never meant to understand. After that trip, I never went back to that camping spot. Not once. I couldn't. That weird, mysterious layer over everything we experienced, the unexplainable moments just wouldn't let me. The woods, the creek, the quiet that I used to crave, it was all just too much. I don't know what was out there, but it wasn't something I was ready to face again. And to this day, I can't bring myself to camp in those mountains. I don't know if it was the lights, the footsteps, or those damn black texts. But whatever it was, it's a mystery I'm never going to solve. And part of me doesn't want to. So, that was it. I never went back. I'm gonna tell you something that still gives me the chills to this day. This happened on October 2009, and I'm sharing it with you now to show you just how terrifying it was. I'm no stranger to camping. I've done it all over the place, know every crack and crevice of the spots I usually go to. But this time, I wanted to shake things up. So I decided, let's go to Maine. And not some cozy campsite next to a lake, but deep into the woods. I'm talking about the thickest part of the Appalachian Trail. I thought it'd be peaceful, just me and Amy in the middle of nowhere. No distractions, no noise, no cell phones, just nature. We get there, and of course, setting up wasn't as smooth as I thought. The wind was howling like a damn freight train. You ever tried putting up a tent with gusts that strong? It's like wrestling with a damn tornado. Took us longer than expected, but we got it done. And I thought, okay, now I can finally relax. But no, it wasn't even 45 minutes after we set up camp when Amy, looking pale as a ghost, nudged me. "Look over there," she says. "What now?" And she points. I look, and sure enough, there's some guy walking down the rocks toward us. Just some dude in a damn brown cloak with a flashlight, in the middle of nowhere. And he's walking all stiff like he's stuck in some kind of slow motion. At first, I thought, maybe he's just a hiker, no big deal. But then I got a closer look. Something was off. This guy wasn't acting normal. He was moving in a way that wasn't right, and I didn't trust it. But I didn't want to freak Amy out, so I told her, it's fine. Probably just someone, nothing to worry about. I look back at Amy, and she's practically shaking. "Do you see him?" she's whispering. And I did. But then, just as I'm looking at him, he vanishes. Amy was looking at. "Where did he go?" she says. I didn't have an answer. No idea. I didn't know what to say. I'd just seen a guy, and now he was gone. Just like that. I tried to brush it off, but Amy wasn't buying it. Neither was I, honestly. We sat there for Like our attention and conversation shifted to what we have seen. When we finally got into the tent around 11, I thought I could at least get a few hours of sleep. But no. Amy woke me up like half an hour later. She was panicking. "Listen," she said, her voice low and tight. "There's someone out there." I groggily sat up. "What? What do you mean?" And then it hits me. I hear it too. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling around the tent. The sound of the zipper like someone's trying to get in. I grab the flashlight, unzip the tent, and look around. Nothing. Not a damn thing. The woods are silent as hell, except for the wind. No footprints. No sounds of movement. Just dead quiet. I tell her, it's just the wind. Stop freaking out. But Amy's wide-eyed. I swear I heard it. Zipper, footsteps. They were right there. The next morning, Amy's face is pale. She tells me, I saw something. A shadow. No, not just a shadow. It was a figure, but it didn't have a head. Just this huge, looming shape outside the tent. What? I tried to tell her it was just the trees, but I saw the fear in her eyes. I looked out again, didn't see anything. But that feeling? It stuck. Something was not right. I couldn't shake it. We packed up and got the hell out of there fast. I didn't even care if we were supposed to stay another night. I wanted to leave. I wanted to go home. The drive back wasn't any better. We made our way through the valley, and I swear to God, I thought I saw the same figure hooded, walking stiffly, the same goddamn posture. It was like he was following us. She was quiet, not saying much. I kept checking the mirror, but no matter how many times I looked, there was nothing there. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. We never spoke about it again after that. Never. Camping in Maine, deep in those woods, it changed something. I don't know if it was the lights, the shadow, or that weird, headless figure outside our tent. Amy got sick the week after we got back. A high fever, chills, just feeling off. I didn't know if it was stress or something in the air out there, but it lasted a whole damn week. I haven't been back to that spot since not once. I don't care how much time passes or how many years go by. That trip was the last time I ever set foot in those woods. Whatever the hell was out there, it's better left unknown. Camping in Appalachian Trail, that wasn't the adventure I was looking for. It was a goddamn nightmare, and I'm fine with never going back. This happened when we were 15. Just regular kids, you know? Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, we were just kids. In our group, Eamon was the oldest, the leader in a way. He was always the one coming up with these wild ideas. I don't know why we always went along with them, but that night, he came up with something that I'll never forget. He suggested we go deep into the woods behind his house. It was in this small town in West Virginia. I remember, like, really clearly, it was the first time any of us were going to try alcohol and marijuana. I'm not even sure what made us think it was a good idea, but there we were, all 15 and thinking we could handle it. Eamon brought the alcohol. I think it was whiskey, something cheap, and someone else had some weed. Looking back, it all seems so ridiculous. We were so naive and stupid. At that age, I don't think any of us ever really thought about what could go wrong. You don't when you're 15, right? You just go along with whatever seems exciting, whatever makes you feel older, like you're stepping into something bigger than you. The thought of anything bad happening, it doesn't even cross your mind. You're too busy laughing, too busy trying to be cool, trying to be grown up. But that night, I swear, something was off. Something that none of us could explain at the time. We'd found this little spot in the woods, all secluded and quiet, just far enough from Eamon's house. We were all feeling a little buzzed, I guess. The alcohol was hitting us. The weed was starting to take effect, and we were just kind of stumbling around, laughing and talking. I don't think we even knew what we were doing. Everything felt kind of funny, but at the same time, weirdly quiet. And then we heard it. A scream. Not like a scream, something fake. It was real. You could feel the fear in it, the raw terror. It was distant at first, so we sort of ignored it. Maybe it was just some animal, I thought. But it kept going, louder, clearer, and it sounded like someone in real pain. I remember looking around at the others. They were all looking at me, or at each other, like none of us knew what to do. I mean, it's not like we'd ever been in a situation like this before. We were just kids. What were we supposed to do? And then, of course, Eamon did what Eamon always does. He made a decision for us. "Let's check it out," he said. I don't know why we agreed. Maybe we were too scared to say no. Maybe we thought he knew something we didn't, like he was the brave one and we should follow. So we grabbed flashlights and headed toward the sound of the scream. But, oh God, the farther we walked, the worse it felt. The woods were dark, too dark. It felt like we were being pulled into something we didn't understand. We were a good way into the woods by then, and I remember feeling this weird, cold feeling in my stomach. Like something was wrong. Eamon stopped, his flashlight flickering in the distance. The scream came again, and this time it was closer. Way too close. I don't think we should go any further, Eamon said. But it was too late. We'd already gone too far. None of us wanted to admit we were scared, but we all knew it. But what did we do? We kept going. Because what else were we supposed to do? I remember thinking we should have turned around right there, but we didn't. The scream echoed again, this time so close it made my skin crawl. We turned back. We ran. All of us, running like our lives depended on it. My heart was beating so loud I could barely hear anything else. We finally reached the clearing near Eamon's house, but even then, the scream didn't stop. It just kept going. I felt like I was going crazy. We pounded on the door to Eamon's house, desperate to get inside. But Eamon's older brother, he wasn't answering. Or maybe he was just making fun. I don't know. Either way, we were stuck outside. The scream, like some kind of nightmare, was still echoing in the distance, and there was no way we could just ignore it. We walked around the block, trying to calm ourselves down. I didn't want to walk. I didn't want to go anywhere, really. But it felt like we had to, like we needed to get out of there before whatever was in the woods found us. And that's when we saw him. A guy, in a black hoodie, walking slowly. But then he stopped, right in the middle of the street, like he was waiting for us to notice him. We didn't say anything. None of us did. But we all noticed. And he noticed us. And then he turned around. Slowly, like it was some kind of weird show, and started walking backward. I can't even explain it. Something about it just felt wrong. Everything about that guy felt wrong. The worst part, it wasn't just that he looked at us. It was what he did next. He stepped off the sidewalk, out of the light, and hid behind a bush. Just stood there, watching us, waiting. I don't know why, but I was terrified. I could feel my heart in my throat. We just kept walking, trying to keep our distance, trying to act normal, but I swear I could feel his eyes on me the whole time. Then, suddenly, without warning, he stepped out from behind the bush and started walking towards us. Fast, too fast. He was coming straight at us. And that's when we broke. We didn't even look back. We all ran. We ran like we were being chased. We didn't stop until we hit the town center, 2 miles away. We didn't stop for anything. By the time we got back to Eamon's house, I think we were all in shock. Out of breath, out of our minds. The guy was gone, but the fear stayed with me. It still does. We didn't talk about it. Not then, and not later. I don't think any of us wanted to say the words out loud, but none of us ever went back to Eamon's house after that night. We never hung out with him again. We just stopped. Something about that night made us all realize that sometimes one bad decision, one stupid idea from the wrong person, can pull you into something you can't escape. We never talked about what happened again. Ever. But it left something inside all of us. I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed in the woods a little longer, if we hadn't turned back. This is the story I need to get off my chest. I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe telling it will help me sleep at night. Maybe it'll stop the nightmares. I don't know. But here it goes. What happened when I decided to celebrate my promotion in a way I thought would be fun, a little relaxing. Instead, it turned into a nightmare I still can't shake. So, I'd just gotten this huge promotion at work, the kind of promotion you don't expect at 28, especially in a company where you feel like you're just another cog in the machine. But somehow, I'd managed to break a record for high sales in the region, and my boss was on cloud 9. He tossed me a fat paycheck and told me I deserved a weekend off. He didn't have to tell me twice. I called up my boyfriend, Cyrus, and a couple of close friends, Ansel and Kirsten. Thought it'd be perfect, secluded, out in the woods, no distractions. Just us, some drinks, maybe a fire pit, and peace. At least that's what I thought I was getting. Now, looking back, I should have paid more attention to the details. I knew the cabin was far out, deep in the mountains of North Carolina, but I figured, hey, no problem. A little isolation never hurt anyone. The pictures looked good. The cabin had what I needed: enough space for the four of us, a fireplace, some rustic charm, perfect for a celebration, or so I thought. When we arrived, the place seemed perfect at first. There was no cell service, none. No Wi-Fi. It felt like we were off the grid, and for the first few hours, that was exactly what I wanted. No calls, no texts, no emails. Just us. The first night was perfect. We drank, we laughed, and we celebrated. It felt great. Really great. We stayed up late, way later than I should have, but I didn't care. I was on a high. I didn't think anything could go wrong. But goddamn, I was wrong. Around 3 a.m., things took a turn. Ansel and Kirsten had their own room, and I could tell they were a little spooked. Not by the trip, but by something else. At some point, Kirsten woke up, and I guess she felt uneasy. I didn't know what was going on at first, but she started shaking Ansel. Awake. When he finally opened his eyes, she whispered something to him that made his face go pale. I didn't catch it at the time, but I think she saw something outside the bedroom window. Now, I know this sounds like some creepy, but I swear to you, that's exactly what happened. Kirsten was the one who noticed it first. She said she saw a figure dark, tall, maybe a person. The worst part, its hands were pressed up against the glass. What the hell? Ansel thought she was just half dreaming, but then she saw it again. And this time, so did he. They were both awake, and the figure didn't move. It just stayed there, hands against the window, as if it was waiting for something. Just after that, the pounding on the door was hard, aggressive, like someone was trying to break in. It didn't stop, either. It went for a few minutes, just bang, bang. Louder with each hit. Finally, the noise stopped. And just like that, the figure outside, their window vanished. I don't know how long we stayed awake after that, but no one slept. Not really. We stayed up for hours, talking about what we'd seen, what we'd heard. Ansel seen the figure too, just like Kirsten. Neither of them could explain it, and honestly, neither could I. I don't know what was out there, and I didn't want to find out. The next day, we tried to brush it off. We said we'd just let it go, but we all knew we were lying to ourselves. The second night, I wasn't about to let my guard down. I stayed awake the whole time, eyes fixed on the woods outside, waiting. I don't know if I was hoping nothing would happen or if I just didn't want to be caught off guard. But around 2 a.m., the figure. This time, it was clearer, and this time, I was ready for it. I saw it first, from the window, moving from the trees into the clearing in front of the cabin. It was tall, thin, with this weird jerky movement. It wasn't walking. It was skipping toward the cabin. It was fucking terrifying. Its eyes were dark, hollow, and its face, God, it had no expression, just emptiness. Then loud bang on the door sent a jolt through all of us. We stood there, frozen, staring at the door. It was obvious someone was out there, an intruder. My boyfriend grabbed the steel rod lying on the ground and stood in front of the door, ready. Without a word, he flung it open and swung the rod with all his might. The impact was sharp, straight to the face. But the face, that was the eerie part. It was hidden beneath a wild tangle of long hair, making it impossible to see clearly. It didn't scream. It didn't even flinch. It just stumbled back, its head jerking, and then it turned and disappeared into the woods. The whole night, we stayed alert, but nothing else happened. We remained locked inside, too terrified to step out. With no cell signal, we couldn't even call the police. We left the next morning, packed up in a hurry. It was like we couldn't get out of there fast enough. But here's the thing that still messes with me when I tried to contact the cabin owner after we got back, just to ask if there had ever been any other reports, or if anyone had experienced anything strange. Nothing. No response. Maybe I was stupid to book a cabin so deep in the woods, but I won't make that mistake again. I've learned my lesson. That weekend was supposed to be a celebration. It turned into something that still haunts me. Something I don't think I'll ever fully understand. I don't care how nice the pictures look. I won't be going back to those woods. A group of 3 friends, after a long meetup and the usual catching up, decided to take a camping trip in a remote part of the Appalachian Trail. This wasn't the first time we had gone camping together, but this time we wanted something different. We wanted to get deep into the woods, away from everything, and really disconnect. One of us had just bought this new SUV and he was itching to show it off. He also wanted a good excuse to take it for a long spin, so it worked out. He was all pumped up about this being a weekend for both the drive and the camping. We packed up the 4-wheeler. We had enough gear to set up. Tents, sleeping bags, and enough junk food to give us a heart attack in the middle of nowhere. One of our other friend had been to this part of the trail before, so we figured he'd know where the hell he was going. Honestly, I didn't care where we ended up. All I cared about was getting out of the city, drinking some cold beers, and forgetting about everything else for a while. The drive was a mission. It took us about 3 to 4 hours to get deep enough into the woods. No cell service, nothing. And when I say no service, I mean it. We were out there, man. Out in the middle of nowhere. It felt like civilization was a lifetime away, and that's exactly what we wanted. By the time we got to our spot, the sun was already starting to dip low, but we didn't give a shit. We started unloading, setting up the tent, and cracking open beers. The first thing we did was drink, because why not? That's how camping's supposed to be, right? We didn't have any real plans. Just some bullshit talk, and the hours flew by. At one point, I don't even know what time it was, but it felt like we'd been sitting there for hours. We were sitting around the fire, completely oblivious, when I heard something from the bush. It was subtle at first, a rustle of leaves, like something was moving out there. I froze, my heart jumping up to my throat. I turned to Hiram and Gideon, who were still laughing about some dumb thing, but I cut them off. Yo, did you hear that? They both looked at me like I was crazy. Man, you're just paranoid. It's probably a deer or something. But I wasn't buying it. I swear there was something off about it. The sound was too deliberate, too quiet. I looked around the camp, expecting to see something. The air felt different, like something was about to go down. Hiram glanced around too, suddenly serious. Maybe we should check it out, he said, though he wasn't exactly thrilled about it. Hiram, the practical one, was usually the last person to spook. But tonight, something felt off to all of us. Check it out. Are you fucking serious? Gideon snapped. Who the hell are we gonna find out there? Some Sasquatch. That's when I heard the rustling again, but this time it was closer. Way too close. Like someone was creeping up on us. That was it. I jumped up, my adrenaline kicking in, and grabbed the flashlight. Fuck this. We need to check it out now. I turned, and we all stood still for a second, looking at each other. Then, out of nowhere, this man stepped out from the shadows of the trees. I shit you not. He was in his 30s, tall, wearing this long, ragged-looking coat, and he was holding a butcher knife. A fucking butcher knife. My first thought was, is this a joke? But the second I saw that knife, I knew it wasn't. He didn't say anything. Just stood there, staring at us with this cold, dead look on his face. My heart was racing, but I tried to stay calm. Gideon, still half drunk, was the first to react. What the hell do you want, man? He stood up, slurring a little, but I could see the fear in his eyes. The guy didn't answer. He just raised the knife, and in that moment, everything clicked. He wasn't here for a conversation. He wasn't here for any of our bullshit. He was here to hurt us. The panic hit me hard, but my body just reacted. I grabbed a piece of wood lying by the fire pit and swung it at him. He ducked, but not fast enough. I nailed him right in the arm. He screamed this loud, terrifying scream and dropped the knife. The bastard wasn't going down without a fight, though. He stumbled back, clutching his arm, but didn't drop the knife. It was like he didn't feel pain. Hiram, who had been standing frozen this whole time, finally snapped out of it. He grabbed a rock and threw it at the guy, distracting him long enough for Gideon to get in a few good swings with the rod. But the guy was fast. Too fast. Before we knew it, he bolted off into the woods, disappearing into the dark. We stood there for a second, too shaken to do much. My heart was still hammering in my chest, and I could barely catch my breath. Then I looked down and saw the butcher knife lying on the ground. We all stared at it, unsure of what to do. It was real. This wasn't some prank. We just got attacked by some random psycho with a knife. We filed a police report, but it led to nothing. They couldn't track the guy. No one had witnessed anything, and the knife had no prints. The police were courteous, but their response was nothing more than a half-hearted shrug. Even after we left, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't acted, if I hadn't grabbed that stick and swung it. That thought still eats at me. Maybe we'd all be dead, or maybe that guy would have just taken our stuff and disappeared. I don't know, but I do know this. I'll never camp out there again. And ever since, I don't go camping without a pistol. I carry it everywhere I go, especially when it's in isolated spots.